What is that? I mean, all these years I've been just trying to dialogue and interact and have mutual understanding and wrestle with issues. And the pat, I've never found what the pat memorized answers were. Never heard of training for it either. But look at how serious it is. According to R.U. Kaplan, and this was in his book that he edited, The Real Messiah, a Jew must give his life rather than embrace Christianity. This is not mere rhetoric. Throughout our history, millions of Jews were given this choice, the cross or death. Invariably, they chose death. In other words, this book that my rabbi friend gave me early on in my journey portrays how Jews look at Jesus and, quote, Christianity is an apostate faith that has caused the murder of millions of our people in history. Here's another Jewish author. Expands on this. The missionary is characterized as a misguided soul. See, the moment you hear my testimony, oh, well, see, you were just on drugs, you were messed up, you were looking for something. I was on drugs, I was messed up, I was decidedly not looking for Jesus, looking for God, looking for transformation. And then was I still on drugs when I got my PhD? I mean, at what point are you going to have to give up that argument? But no, the missionary, any Jew who's trying to win other Jews to Jesus, is a misguided soul. Now look at this. He's a person whose power of rational reasoning likely has long since been disengaged. His illogical thrusts are psychologically necessary for him. In other words, the whole reason I'm doing this week is because I have to build up my own faith. I have to prop it up. So I have to keep teaching these things so that I'll convince myself it's real. It's so wild to read this. I see your reaction in your eyes as you're looking at this, but this is how it's believed. His indoctrination into Christianity's missionary nature, whether he be former Jew or Gentile, makes him impervious to reasonable persuasion. The missionary's mental well-being is supported by his belief. His mind is closed to disturbing intrusions. So, anti-missionary perspective. What can a Jew lose by embracing Christianity? This is traditional Jewish perspective. The answer is everything. Christianity negates the fundamentals of Jewish faith, and one who accepts it rejects the very essence of Judaism. Even if he continues to keep all the rituals, it is the same as if he abandoned Judaism completely. The Talmud teaches us whoever accepts idolatry denies the entire Torah. And therefore, just to interject this, if in any way we believe that Yeshua is divine, we are guilty of making a man into a god, and therefore idolatry, therefore the worst heresy. A Jew who accepts Christianity might call himself a Jewish Christian, but he is no longer a Jew. He can no longer even be counted as part of a Jewish congregation. Conversion to another faith is an act of religious treason. It is one of the worst possible sins that a Jew can commit. Along with murder and incest, it is one of the 3 cardinal sins which may not be violated even under pain of death. The missionaries tell you believe in Jesus and be saved. The truth is that one who falls into their net is eternally cast away from before his God. Most rabbis would say that if you believe in Jesus, you are still Jewish if you were born Jewish. However, you are not counted among the Jewish people in terms of function and benefit, etc. So here, this is telling you pretty strongly, you're going to hell, or at least to a place of punishment or judgment, or you're under God's displeasure if you believe these ways. It's not a light matter, life and death. There's an anti-missionary book by Michael Drausen, Their Hollow Inheritance, and the foreword's written by Rabbi Gabriel Marzel of Safed, Israel. And I read the introduction, I read the foreword, I could not believe what I read. Many missionary cults use psychological indoctrination or brainwashing techniques to obtain their quotas. Ooh. This process usually begins by luring their victims to the cult center, away from family, friends, and familiar surroundings. What he failed to mention is that we club them over the head first and then drug them in the vehicle. He forgot to put that part in. Upon arriving, they are assigned a companion of the opposite sex. Now listen. There was a cult called Children of God years ago that used seduction as bait, that they would have young ladies go out and seduce men and supposedly bring them to God. It was a weirdo, sicko cult, okay? But what's wild is that this rabbi, who's probably a well-educated man in his field, actually believes that this stuff happens. The views are so skewed, it's mind-boggling. Upon arriving, they are assigned a companion of the opposite sex who is to program the cult's beliefs, accomplishments, and goals into their thought processes by monotonous repetition day and night. Subjects are also deprived of sleep and food, thereby substantially lowering their mental and physical resistance. Now listen, I've been following the Lord 35 years now. I know most of the major Jewish ministry groups in the world. I know key Jewish leaders in terms of reaching out to our fellow Jewish people for Jesus. And there's not a one of them, except the few that have been kidnapped by the Orthodox rabbis that were subjected to this. We do have a few horror stories on that end. But there's nobody that's within 1,000,000 miles of this, and yet it's actually believed. That's how evil our faith is viewed. During this period, the other cult members make them feel loved, wanted, needed, and privileged to help bring the cult's sacred message to the world. Within a few days, each innocent victim is mentally and physically broken and becomes one of them. And who are the missionaries after? It behooves the missionary to prey on such vulnerable individuals as the lonely, the elderly, the poor, the emotionally unstable, the naive, or those who are just untutored in Scripture. If you listen to a tape series by Rabbi Tovia Singer, and he talks about the church's interest in Jewish evangelism, he paints the same picture. One Messianic congregation even has a van that goes to the old folks' homes to bring these poor, vulnerable old Jews into their clutches. People hear that. Now remember, Jews have good reason to mistrust anything, quote, Christian. History has been very ugly in many ways, and if that's all they know, the outward history of an outward hypocritical church, well, why not believe all these crazy and ugly things? The funny thing for me is the people I'm always after, the ones I go after, are the educated rabbis, the ones with whom I can have rational discourse. It always disappoints me when the person I talk with doesn't know much and doesn't have much background. But that's just a personal aside. Okay, I started the early online days. Someone encouraged me to get onto America Online, where they had religious forums, etc. Everybody does now. This is in the earlier days. And I began to post in some of the Judaism folders where they were having discussions about Judaism and Messianic Judaism and Christianity and so on and so forth. So suddenly I became the lightning rod for everybody's hostility and attack. I'm always going to be mild-mannered when I'm writing, and you can't hear tone when you write, so all the more you have to be gracious. You have to go out of your way to be gracious, and email and bulletin board communication and so on. Okay, this is what one online anti-missionary said in response to my post. Now, he was very harsh, okay? I know some very gracious anti-missionaries that are friendly and will never insult you or attack you or anything like that, but this is typical of the venom, the anger that's there. It does not matter that your audience is mostly deaf to your bleeding and braying. This is a guy responding to me. It does not matter that we consider you to be a perverter of our children, a preacher of heresy, a bird of prey circling about the flock of our God of Israel. You will do anything, say anything, claim any defense to hawk your stick on the wall, meaning the cross. Is Yeshu, that's the way they would say his